Hi, Noel from My Town Movers, standing outside the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure office in Memphis. Just spent an amazing afternoon hearing some truly inspiring stories from survivors. You'll notice in the videos they will be wearing these capes. I am more than pink because these women are more than pink. Get your Kleenex ready and be ready to be inspired, encouraged to these videos. Please watch and listen.
I'm Pat McCree, and I'm a 23-year breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed the second year of the Race for the Cure. The first year, the race closed off my street, and we didn't know anything about breast cancer. We're most annoyed that our street was closed off. And the next year when I was diagnosed, I wasn't nearly so annoyed. I was really, very happy to be part of the Race for the Cure and to know that there were people who were doing things to try to find a cure for what I had. I was diagnosed at the Women's Health Center at Baptist. I remember sitting there. There was an ice storm. It was February of '94, the great big Memphis ice apocalypse, I believe they called it. And Dr. Lynn Gaden there told me that she was almost 100% sure that I had breast cancer. And I remember sitting there and thinking, there's something for me to learn here that I couldn't learn any other way. That was right after I thought I may just fall down here on the floor and cry for my mother. You know, there's something to learn here that I can't learn any other way. And then the next thought was, and you're gonna need to pass it on. And I'm real thankful that I've been able to do that I had no idea I would be passing it on to my daughter. I was 44 when I was diagnosed. My daughter was 36 when she was diagnosed, then to my sister who was diagnosed, and then to another sister who was diagnosed. And it turns out that we have the breast cancer gene, and there's been a great deal of research. I did treatment for the first time. I had a mastectomy and did chemotherapy in '94. I had breast reconstruction in '96, but the medicines that I had in '94 worked, and I stayed cancer-free until 2001. I was diagnosed yet again with cancer on the other side, and I had another mastectomy and did a treatment that had not been available when I was diagnosed in '94. In 2012, I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer on my chest wall, and I took medicines that were not available at all when I was first diagnosed. So much research had been done in those 18 years. And then in September of this year, in 2016, I was diagnosed yet again. This time I have breast cancer that has gone to my bones. And I am getting medicines. I started a medicine on October 2nd, and the importance of starting in October wasn't lost on me, because I have always thought of October as our month. And there are people who are offended about all the pink ribbonness and all of that, especially some of my friends and acquaintances who have metastatic breast cancer, and they feel somehow that they're lost in the pink ribbonness of it all. And so I love Komen's new slogan. I'm not sure if this is local or if this is a national slogan of more than pink, because it is about so much more than pink. And what I have learned is that more than pink is about new treatments for those of us who many people, it's been interesting the last few weeks that people who have seen me after hearing of my new diagnosis think that I've got, one foot pretty much in the grave and I'm just about out of here. And I don't feel that way at all, because I have such hope in the new treatments. And I loved reading, as I knew I was going to do this video, I read up on where Komen is as far as metastatic cancer, and I knew so much research had been done that helped so many of my friends before, when it was about early stage disease. But now 40% of what Komen is raising this year is going to go for people like me with metastatic disease. And of course, my great fear is that my daughter, her cancer will metastasize. My other fear, of course, is that my granddaughter, could end up with this gene and possibly face this journey. But I know this. I know that we have a pack behind us. And I have walked in that race year after year, and I have felt that pack behind me and in front of me. And I've driven in that I got to drive in fact, my daughter and my granddaughter and I got to drive the pace car in the race one year. And so I got to be at the front of that entire miles-long pack. And my heart is full when I just go back and think about that. And when I think about this year and the year after this and the year after that there will be people gathering like that. There'll be newly diagnosed people. There'll be people like me who have metastatic cancer. There'll be families of people, my friends who've died from metastatic breast cancer, but who lived well and had joyous times, much of it because of this race. But what I have learned is that God is in this journey in a big way, and that He never, ever wants us to walk alone through any sort of crisis. And Komen has given us sort of a posse that I think is God created to sometimes it's somebody to show you the way. Sometimes it's somebody who's already been there to walk beside you. Sometimes it's a person behind you just pushing you along to keep up the fight. I have found that there's almost always somebody there to put a little joy in it. That it's not a depressing journey. It's a joyful journey. And right at diagnosis, a person doesn't know they can choose that joyful journey. They need somebody else. And one of the things I do, I laugh about the More Than Pink, because I've always been about more than pink, because sometimes I just sit down beside somebody who's having a rough time, and they may just be sitting there weeping, and I just open my purse and pull out my little joyful nose and just sit there for a little bit, and people can't help it. It's just going to make you just laugh a little bit. And I usually have one in my purse to pass along. But that's sort of been my motto in this, to live it, learn it, pass it on. In fact, it's my family motto. And we opened a center called Flying Colors in '96 that was a place where people, if they're the place that just told them, the doctor's office that just told them they had breast cancer, could call us and say, can you come here, or can she come there, and just talk to somebody who's been there. Because whatever we face in life, we just need to know somebody who's been there, and we need to know somebody comes out the other side. Because there's a moment when you're just not sure you will. And as I remember those days during that ice storm when I was diagnosed, I remember picking out my funeral songs, which has totally ruined them when we sing them in church now. We have one called This World Is Not My Home, and I was singing that back then to myself, thinking, yeah, that'll be in my funeral, because I'm going to be gone here in a couple of months, So, but now 23 years later, it's an empowering song, because I'm still here, and so many of us who've been down this road are still here, and a lot of it is because of research that's been done by Komen. But as important to me is the community that it's given to breast cancer survivors and their families. And when people have died from breast cancer, that their families can keep on coming and celebrating them. It's just, it's a wonderful thing, and it makes me sad to think that there were people who went through this so many years before without this feeling of community. When my husband was with me during the ice storm when we got the news about my breast cancer, and he was devastated because it had not been very many years since my mother had been diagnosed with cancer, and they told her she had 2 months to live, and that's how long she lived. So we were all just pretty afraid. The hard thing was then calling my daughter and telling her, calling my sisters and telling them, but I found the more you tell it, that it gets a little bit easier. And once everybody realized that there would still be some laughter involved in it, that we didn't really have to sit down, that yeah, I might die from this, but it wasn't going to be today, and it probably wasn't going to be tomorrow, And so we just wrapped our minds around that, just taking one step at a time to see each doctor who was involved and find out what the journey would be. Most of the things we feared, just like everything in life, wasn't nearly as bad as we thought it would be. You heard such tales about chemotherapy and about the pain after a mastectomy and all that, and most of that did not turn out to be true. It was all very manageable. I was thankful that I told the people at the breast center that I was looking to help somebody else go through it in light of that message I felt that I had about learning something and passing it on. So they pretty quickly put me to work volunteering, and I think that's the magic ingredient in this, is to be the person putting out your hand to help the next person. Because if you just curl yourself into a ball and think about your own misery, it will be multiplied. But if you get yourself out there and you find the next person who gets diagnosed, and you hold out your hand or you hold out your nose, then everything changes for you, and everything changes for her, and everything changes for her family. And I found that the more time passed, the more my family heard of other survivors and their empowering stories, that we were all encouraged. My husband tells me that he spent a couple of years really sort of expecting me just to die, from it. It took him a while to get his mind wrapped around the fact that you could live with cancer. And not only could you live, but you could live very well. And we have been showered with blessings. God, I think that in times like that, you get much, much closer to God. And we have found with each, this is my fourth diagnosis, that with each one of them, we were closer and closer and felt His presence more and more. And that the verse that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. And it has proven true. I wouldn't go back and change any of it. And I've had more than one person think that was just a little bit crazy. But now my daughter, after her diagnosis, and she's 8 years out now, and my sister, who's also 8 years out, say the same thing, that we learned a lot, we gained a lot. We learned that even though we thought, in theory, we knew before all of this that you could find joy in hard circumstances. We had no idea how much joy you could find in very hard circumstances. So we think of it as a grand adventure. Other people talk about how their family plays golf together or skis together. We get breast cancer and manage it together and come out triumphant. And I have seen it. I've seen it with women who have little bitty children. That's what we all fret about the most, that when our children are young, and what about my kids, and there's not enough of me in my children. And we've seen lives fall apart. We've seen so much of it, but we also see people come together, and we see children develop incredible strength that they take into adulthood, and they bring it to days like today. They do. My first advice is always, don't leap ahead to tomorrow. Stay right here in this minute and know that if you start leaping ahead, that you have lost today. But if you stay here today and you just think, you know God is going to give you what you need today. And when you wake up tomorrow, He'll do it again. And the next day, and He'll do it again. And some things, it takes a little time. You have to grieve. You have to grieve about the changes that are going to happen to your body. I know not everyone has a mastectomy. Most people did back in the day when I was first diagnosed. But many people have less invasive surgery now. But all of it is doable. And all of it is especially doable if you just stay in the moment. Just stay right here and know that God is with you, and that you are not going to be alone in any of it. And I would give somebody some more advice, and that would be, give your laptop to somebody else for a while and don't get on the internet. Don't go out there and find out how many people died from this, or the person who's in the middle of the night and forgot to take her pain meds, after surgery, who's really hurting. Right this minute, don't go read her story tonight. You can read her story later, and you can add your own story of how you did it and how it wasn't quite so bad. And I would say to do as I said earlier, find somebody else who needs you. It's some of the most important work in healing that you can do. And even if it's the person who's sitting next to you in the waiting room, just about to go in and get some news, who's been sitting there in that robe all day at the Women's Center, who's going to get some bad news, just put out your hand. You don't have to say anything. Just put your hand out there and hold them. And I think that we are all very ordinary women when it comes to this. There are no richer, smarter, poorer, different color, anything in this. We are all, I guess I'd say we're all more than pink, by George. We are a sisterhood in this, and there's nobody who can't use your story in their own healing. And there's no way on earth you will fail to help heal yourself if you tell your story. I'm Pat Godfrey McCree, and I am more than pink.